the bottom of your screen as well. And so, yeah, so once Brenda finishes her presentation, Brenda will take questions. So I'm gonna let Brenda get started. So probably many of you know who Brenda is, because Brenda is a rock star. She's an amazing human being doing amazing work with like just the greatest spirit. We're so grateful to have her speaking for us today. So if you don't know who she is, this is a little bio that just sort of, it just doesn't at all capture the enormity of her spirit, but it's a little bio of some of the things that she's involved in right now. So Brenda is a vegan food justice activist in Baltimore City who co-founded Thrive Baltimore, a community resource center that offers classes, workshops, cooking demos, and other programming that promotes a healthier, kinder, more sustainable lifestyle. She's also the executive director of the Afro-Vegan Society, a nonprofit organization that provides resources to people in marginalized communities to assist them in transitioning to veganism. She's also the co-creator of Vegan Soul Fest, a massive annual festival that celebrates culture and all the aspects of vegan living, and co-owner of The Greener Kitchen, a plant-based deli and food distributor whose mission is to make plant-based foods affordable and accessible to all. So with that, I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to Brenda. Thank you so much, Brenda, for being here.
Thank you, Tracy, so much for having me. And you might want to check into the chat just to see some of the messages that are popping up. My bio has actually expanded since whenever you got that one, but at this point, it's there's so much going on that could probably be a whole talk in and of itself. So I guess today I am going to be focusing on some of the justice aspects of vegan living, and specifically, since I am a food justice activist, I'll be talking about the food system. So I want to go ahead and share my screen. Oh, it looks like I cannot share my screen.
Oh, but really? Do you not have the share button at the bottom here? Hold on.
I do. It says host disabled participant screen sharing. Why'd you do that, Tracy?
Oh no, I didn't mean to do that. Huh. Goodness, let's see. Well, I didn't think you were a participant. I thought you were a panelist. Okay, now see if you can do it.
Okay. All right.
Did that do anything for you?
It did.
Good. Okay.
Okay. So. Okay. Here we go. All right. And so at the, I'd rather not be too much of a distraction here. So I'm actually gonna turn off my video as well. Okay, here we go. All right, so again, I'm a food justice activist who works to address food justice issues, but through a vegan lens. So this is something that is actually quite different from what is currently happening in the mainstream food justice circles. In general, food justice is looked at in terms of everyone having access to healthy foods, because as we all should know, every person around the globe does not have access to food, much less healthy food. But even within these food justice circles, it's this concept of healthy is such a broad and amorphous concept that few people who are doing this work actually agree on what access to healthy food even means and what it looks like. Generally, fresh fruits and vegetables are included within the scope of healthy foods, but that's never where the conversation ends. Raising chickens for eggs and meat, goats for milk and meat, and rabbits and other wild animals is inevitably a part of the conversations about increasing people's access to foods. And because there's this prevailing assumption that A, we need to eat animals and their byproducts, and that B, people, especially people in marginalized communities, will never be willing to give up animal products. Discussions about solving food justice issues through a vegan lens are seen as a waste of time. Obviously, I beg to differ, and that's probably why I don't get invited to the meetings very often. But I am going to say what I'm going to say. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And the food justice movement is just going to have to catch up at some point, because the current animal-based food system is a hot mess, and the issues within that system are going to have to be addressed, preferably sooner rather than later. So I engage with people about our current food system a lot, and what people expect to hear in these conversations whenever veganism comes up is the health benefits of eating plant-based foods. And that's an important discussion to be had, especially amongst people in communities that are disproportionately impacted by the illnesses that are caused by harmful dietary choices, like heart disease, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, and some cancers and other diseases. But this particular talk isn't going to be about the potential health benefits of eating plant-based foods. And just as an aside, my organization, Afro Vegan Society, has a ton of information on our website, on our YouTube channel about the health benefits of plant-based eating. We have talks by medical professionals. We have panel discussions featuring vegan doctors who promote plant-based eating for health. We have classes, cooking demos, recipes, all kinds of resources to help educate, support, and inspire people to start making healthier, kinder, more sustainable choices. But this talk is going to go in a slightly different direction. Before I go off the beaten path, I want to first say that being able to choose to eat healthy plant-based foods is a right that every human being on this planet should have. Now, would everybody, if given the choice to eat a healthy plant-based diet, choose to do so? Perhaps not, since there are definitely people who exist who have access to healthy plant foods right now and choose not to. But the information about the benefits of eating plant foods, easy access to those foods, and the ability to afford those foods should be every person's right. That being said, I want to talk about the current animal-based food system and some of the many, many reasons why it is such a problem. First off, I want to dispel the myth of Old McDonald's farm. The vast majority of animals being raised for the foods that are in our grocery stores and that are being served in restaurants are raised in massive numbers because that's the most profitable way to raise animals. And let me be very clear about one thing. The way food is currently raised the way the food system is set up, the way animals are raised, it is not about providing enough food to feed the population. It's about making money. Any large-scale system that's set up for the sole purpose of making money is going to end up being messy as hell. And so I want to explore some examples of this messiness. First up, deforestation for cattle ranching. Let's start with the way that millions of acres of pristine rainforest is being cut down to make room for cattle ranching. Now, why on earth would we be destroying this lush rainforest to create this flat, lifeless landscape? Because we have run out of land to exploit for profit. Our land has been all chopped up for farmland, for housing developments, and for strip malls and whatever else. And these huge multi-billion-dollar animal agribusinesses need to keep expanding, to keep making more money, so they need more land. And what better way to acquire land than by stealing it from people who cannot stop you? Because not only are there countless animal species that live and thrive in our tropical rainforests, but there are people living there too. People who've lived on these lands peacefully for hundreds of years, who are being uprooted and forcefully removed from their lands to make room for cattle ranching. It's the perfect combination. Cheap land plus cheap labor plus cheap animals equals cheap beef. And of course, that translates to disgustingly large amounts of money going to animal agribusiness. The beef industry is a $94 billion a year industry. So of course, things like deforestation, species extinction, and land theft don't matter to people who are making this kind of money. But let's just say, for instance, there's some people who are watching this, who are sitting, here in the US or wherever, and they can't really relate to how the animal-based food system is affecting ecosystems, animals, and peoples thousands of miles away. It's like, yeah, that sucks for them, but they're way over there and I'm way over here. And, I don't really feel anything about that. Animal agribusiness is creating such a wide variety of problems around the globe right now that there's bound to be some manner of skullduggery happening a lot closer to home. So let's talk about the North Carolina hog farming industry. Large-scale hog farming facilities like the ones in rural North Carolina specifically target low-income Black and Brown communities to build their air and water polluting facilities. Smithfield Pork Company, for instance, runs more than 2,000 hog operations in North Carolina alone, raising around 9 million pigs for slaughter each year. I'm sure, as you can imagine, that many pigs in captivity creates an enormous amount of fecal waste, with each hog producing 11 pounds of fecal matter per day. And that times 9 million pigs is 99 million pounds, or 49,500 tons of poop every day. Far more than Smithfield could possibly be able to dispose of efficiently. So the way these facilities address this overabundance of animal feces is to put it into large reservoirs that they call manure lagoons. Oh, right. So there's my slide for the 49,500 tons of poop per day. They put there we go, into these manure lagoons, which are basically huge holes that they dig in the ground and then pump raw, untreated feces into them. Now, that's gross enough in and of itself, but the unfortunate thing is that during heavy storms, these lagoons spill over. There's no protection for them spilling over. And this raw, untreated feces makes its way into the groundwater and eventually into our waterways, which is exactly what happened in North Carolina during Hurricane Florence in 2018. This is an aerial photo of the flooded manure lagoons after Hurricane Florence, where workers had to row around through untreated feces in boats. But the foolishness doesn't end here, because somebody somewhere along the line had the bright idea that another really smart way to dispose of this feces was to regularly spray the feces, onto their fields. Spray it like into the air where wind exists. And so you have mostly Black and brown people who live in the rural communities bordering these massive hog farming operations, who are complaining first and foremost about the smell. They say the smell of feces gets into their homes, it gets into their clothes, it even gets into their skin. And not only that, But a study was done by Duke University that was released in 2018 by the North Carolina Medical Journal, which found that there has been a documented increase in diseases like asthma, tuberculosis, kidney disease, sudden infant death syndrome, and cancer in people who live in close proximity to these industrial pig farming operations. And it's no mystery why these corporations specifically target low income Black and Brown communities to build their air and water polluting farming operations. But in case anybody was wondering, it's racism. Racism is the reason why they build these facilities near poor Black and Brown people. And just in case anybody was thinking like, oh, wow, beef is bad, I'll just cut out beef and it'll be all good. Poultry and dairy, I'm sorry, in case anybody was thinking that it's just the hog farming operations that are doing this with the manure lagoons. It's actually the beef industry, it's the poultry industry, it's the dairy industry. They're all using the same waste disposal practices. And big surprise, they also tend to build their facilities in close proximity to low income communities of color. So circling back around to all this untreated raw feces, because that is so fun to look at and talk about. This feces spillage contributes to a phenomenon that researchers are calling ocean dead zones, where there's a buildup of phosphorus and nitrogen from the waste runoff that gets so high that it depletes all the oxygen in the area and no marine life can live there. There are an estimated 405 oceanic dead zones around the planet right now, most of which are mysteriously located near areas where there are large-scale animal farming operations. And this feces runoff is not the only threat to our oceans. Don't even get me started on the fishing industry, which is really just wreaking havoc on our oceans right now. From the depletion and extinction of many species of fish due to overfishing, to the marine animals that are indiscriminately caught and killed as bycatch, to the disruption of marine food chains and wholesale destruction of seabeds by fishing boats that are called bottom trawlers. And just to give you an idea of how destructive these bottom trawlers are, here are some photos taken, before and after photos of the seafloor before the bottom trawlers went through and after the bottom trawlers have ravaged that area. And this is an example of the scale at which these trawlers are pulling marine life out of the ocean, which should give you an idea of why phrases like total collapse of our ocean ecosystems are being used by marine biologists and conservationists. And then, of course, there's just the water pollution that is caused by the estimated 4.6 million fishing vessels that are currently traversing our oceans. All these factors are driving our oceans to collapse in the next few decades if we allow animal agriculture and the fishing industries to continue on their present course. So, seeing as we've all been living in the second ring of hell for the last 10 months, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about a little bit about viral pandemics. The vast majority of the infectious viral diseases of the recent past and present have originated in domesticated animals. 10,000 years ago, when we brought wild animals under our control through farming them, we brought their diseases with them. And unfortunately, those diseases are a whole lot harder for us to control than the animals are. Now, I'm not going to take a deep dive into the link between infectious disease and animal farming because I'm nowhere near knowledgeable enough on the subject of infectious disease to do any real justice, and there are actually some experts who have done talks on the connection between viral pandemics and animal agriculture. Experts like Dr. Aisha Akhtar and Dr. Michael Greger, who both have videos that break down the connections between infectious disease and animal agriculture really, really well. But just to summarize, the vast majority of the widespread viral pandemics of the past, like measles, which came from cows and sheep, smallpox, which came from camels, whooping cough, which came from pigs, typhoid fever and typhoid Mary, which came from chickens, influenza that came from ducks, and even the common cold, which came from horses, were the result of our decision to domesticate wild animals. And for thousands of years, we've suffered from these viral outbreaks until finally, with scientific advancement, we developed treatments and vaccines for these deadly viruses. And by the 1950s, infectious disease death rates were at an all-time low. But in more recent years, we've seen a resurgence of infectious viral diseases, most of which can be traced back to confined animal farming environments. Diseases like mad cow disease, SARS, bird flu, and swine flu killed millions and were the result of confining animals that we use for food. And now here we are, currently dealing with the global pandemic COVID-19, and now its new overly dramatic cousin B117. COVID-19 spread around the globe like a wildfire from the first recorded cases in China in December of 2019 to more than 98 million people infected worldwide and more than 2 million deaths. All this misery, all this disease, millions upon millions of deaths, basically because of farming animals. And lest anyone misunderstand, the conditions that were created within these confined animal environments exist on large farms, on small farms, on family farms, on organic farms, free range farms, wet markets, live animal markets, all of them. If we're keeping animals confined, we're creating the environment for the development of viral epidemics. And let us not ever forget about the extreme cruelty and abuse built into every aspect of the animal based food system. I mean, you literally have to make animals not be alive anymore in order to turn them into food. And it doesn't get any more abused than that. In the decade that I've been doing vegan activism, I have yet to figure out a way to make people care about animals. I mean, I've described the abuse, I've shown photos, I've played the videos, and every single time there are people who still walk away from my talks and they're like, animals, schmanimals. But even though I still haven't cracked the code to get every person to care about what's happening to animals, I think it's important for people to at least be informed about the basic inner workings of any system that they're taking part in, whether that be the judicial system, the school system, the healthcare system, the housing system, or the food system. And the misery that animals in our food system experience goes far beyond anything that most people could even imagine. I mean, if anybody were to just sit and think to themselves, what is a really sick and depraved thing that can be done to an animal? I can guarantee you that whatever you come up with, they're doing far worse to animals in animal agriculture. There are procedures that are just standard in the industry that have actually made me vomit real food, like when I stumbled across them in my research. But I'm not going to drag folks today down that rabbit hole. Maybe some other talk, but this is not the talk for that. But even with less vomit inducing industry practices, they're still really, really bad. From being confined to cramped and filthy enclosures, their bodies being mutilated with no anesthesia, and contracting painful, untreated infections and being made to wallow in their own and each other's feces for their entire lives. We have created a food system that forcibly breeds millions of animals into a miserable existence and then brutally dispatches them as if their lives meant absolutely nothing. So anyway, after seeing awful photos of animals in captivity, I usually need to look at pictures of adorable baby animals, kind of like a virtual eye wash. So I just wanted to put that there for folks, especially the animal lovers who may be watching this. And I do apologize to anybody who, these images are hard and painful to look at. But a lot of people really, really have no idea that these things are going on and worse. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm only ever able to skim the surface of this hot, steaming pool of mess that is the animal-based food system. This system is just like the manure lagoon of food systems. It's terrible. And there's no way to cover all of it. I could probably do a whole semester class and not cover all of it. On the bright side, more and more people are starting to wake up to how disastrous this food system is, from public health advocates to climate researchers to conservationists to world leaders. Conversations about the catastrophic consequences of our food system are taking on momentum. And fortunately for all of us, we don't have to sit around and wait for all those people to take the next 50 years to figure out what we're going to do about it. There's an entire vegan community just standing by, waiting to welcome people with open arms. And while we will likely get on people's last nerve, and that's inevitable, we will get on your nerves in a very welcoming and embracing way. There are lots of supportive organizations like ARC, who are hosting this event, like my organization, Afro Vegan Society, which coincidentally is hosting an online Black History Month vegan pledge during the entire month of February that will provide education, resources, and support to help people to transition to plant-based eating and vegan living. Anybody who's interested in participating in this event or sponsoring this event for that matter can get more information at www.afrovegansociety.org. This 28-day program and celebration is not just for the people who are taking the pledge. There are a lot of ways that folks who are already vegan can plug in and support those who are embarking on this journey as well. And so even though when you go to the website, it says take the pledge, if you're vegan already, just go ahead and take the pledge anyway. And then there will be lots of stuff, lots of ways that you can participate in the pledge and help other people who are transitioning. So I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A because I know that there's just tons and tons of stuff that I actually didn't cover, but I'm hoping to cover through your questions. But I wanted to thank Tracy and ARC for hosting this event, and to everybody who has showed up for it. Getting this information out is just such a passion of mine, and it's the driving force in my life. And so having opportunities like this one to talk to people about these issues is just always such a joy for me. So I'm actually going to stop this. There we go. I'm actually going to stop the share, and I am ready to answer any questions that folks may have about food justice issues, any of the things that I talked about that are destructive forces that are within the food justice arena, or any other questions that you might have.
And then I just wanted to, so thank you so much, Brenda. I think we probably have lots of questions, and I'm happy to see your face again. And I just wanted to make sure people knew, I mean, you can ask questions through the chat feature, or you can also submit your questions through there's a actual Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Does everybody see that? So I'm sure people have questions. Don't be shy. You can ask Brenda anything about anything in her presentation or anything that she did not cover in the presentation that you have questions about. I will just get us started since nobody else has asked a question just yet. And you covered so much, which is so great, and which is part of what I think is so what I admire so much about your work is that you do, you know, the impacts of animal agriculture are so far reaching, impacting the animals and the planet and human health, particularly communities, minority communities, or underserved populations. And you just cover all of that. So it's a lot. It's a lot to talk about. Well, here's actually some questions. So I will defer to questions from our attendees. Let's see, from Anami. Am I saying that right? Anami? Well, here, okay, so let's start. From Anami, Brenda, what has been the most effective way to connect with people about veganism? What are some do's and don'ts from your experience? And we have a bunch of questions now in the text box too, so I'm gonna let you start with that one.
Okay. Yes. So it kind of depends on who you're trying to reach. You know, everybody is not the same. And so, you know, in my activism may be completely different from somebody who is trying to reach different folks. So, you know, maybe in your activism you're trying to reach I don't know, like college students or medical professionals or whatever. And so in my work, in trying to do this work in marginalized communities, specifically low income Black communities, what has been most effective in our activism has been starting with food. Like food, and this is probably across the board, but food is like the entry point for so many people. And so we would just start having events and we would offer food, and that would open up the possibility of having conversations about plant-based food. So say if we did a film screening or a cooking demo or just like a one-off workshop, we always provide food, free food, you know, good food, because all food is not created equal. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last 10 years with talking to folks about their experiences with or their exposure to veganism, their exposure to plant-based foods, when people's first exposure to plant-based food is food that they don't like, that leaves an impression, and that leaves a lasting impression. And you know, so I've come across people who are like, yeah, somebody gave me some disgusting vegan food 15 years ago, and I didn't want anything to do with any of it since then, which sounds preposterous, but you know, it's just something that I hear over and over again. And so what we do is that we just make sure that there's always some delicious plant-based food waiting for people when they walk through the door. And that creates also like a sense of community, and it just creates a really positive experience for people, so that whatever it is that um that they've come there for, there's like they walk away with this warm feeling of like, oh man, I had really good food, and you know, also that film was riveting. And so that's the way that we, you know, in the activism that we do in Baltimore on the ground, like activism, community-based activism, that is the entry point for us.
Okay, so
Oh,
I
wait,
think
there
we
was there was
have,
something about there was something about do's and don'ts.
yeah.
Again, it comes down to who you're talking to, because I know from my community, a huge don't is like starting off saying like you have got to care about what is happening to animals right now, and if you don't, then you're a horrible person. Like that is a don't, and it probably is just a don't across the board. But a lot of people, because of their passion and because of their drive and because they feel very strongly about wanting to stop animal use and stop animal exploitation, they just go right in. And I think that probably there's not a whole lot of success with that. I hear about a lot of not success with that, and so but I can only speak for what my experiences have been within my community, that just going straight into like the guilting tactics and the just aggressive like animal advocacy in my community is a don't. And you can actually do damage. You can actually like have a setback from approaching your activism that way.
Can I interject a follow-up question on that point? Because I think
Sure.
that's such an important point. And I know you do talk about, like, you do in your activism deal with the cruelty to animals. So how do you bring it up in a way that doesn't turn people away right off the bat? Is it just the way that you do it, or is it like the timing, or a combination?
Yeah, well, the thing at this point, I will never not talk about animals because, it's just, and when I first started doing this activism, it really was just very centered around food. Um, but then it started to, I started to feel like, you know, these are the animals' bodies that we're talking about. Like, this isn't meat that we're talking about. This isn't milk that we're talking about. This is, these animals' bodies that are being used. And it just became weird for me to have an entire conversation about veganism and not address the elephant in the room, so to speak. Like conversations around, even around plant-based eating, they can't not include animals, because even when you're talking about plant-based eating, you're talking about as an alternative to eating animal products. And so here we are right back at the animals. And so I do always talk about them. But I may not start off talking about them. Just like sort of like in this presentation, I didn't start off talking about animals. I sometimes I sort of build to that. Or I don't know, some depending on the audience, there may need to be like some trickery and subterfuge, because I mean you may get folks who are downright aggressive or antagonistic towards you for even bringing animals into the conversation. And so I feel the room. I feel people out. I kind of take the temperature of the room, and if people are shifting around, they're getting uncomfortable, if several people get up and leave, then I may adjust the conversation based on that.
Okay, thank you so much. So we've got so many questions, and I just because I know we've got 10 questions in the chat box, but I just want to make sure the ones in the in the Q&A box we have 10 questions, but I want to make sure the ones in the chat don't disappear entirely. So I think the one of the first questions that we got, which has gotten buried in the chat, is from Kat Besh. Who runs the Vietnam Animal Aid organization, which is in Vietnam. They provide high quality veterinary care to animals, and they're the first organization, farm sanctuary in Vietnam. So they're doing amazing work. Kat is currently locked out of the country because of COVID. But so her question was, She says, thank you. What have you found are the biggest challenges you have faced in food justice, specifically in the Baltimore area? I'm originally from the DC area and spent a lot of time in Baltimore. So I'm curious how receptive people are there, as we have so many challenges in Alabama too, because she grew up in Alabama, split between DC and Alabama. So she's also been in this community that we at ARC are in, which obviously probably has some different challenges, but so specifically challenges that you face in food justice in the Baltimore area, and how receptive people are to that work.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my biggest challenge in doing food justice work in Baltimore is other food justice workers. Um, People, I was told before I ever started doing this work in Baltimore, in marginalized communities, that people are not going to want to hear this. They're not going to care about this food. They're not going to want to eat this food. Nobody, in these communities is ever going to change the way they eat. And so I had all this like disparaging feedback from people, and me being me, I just did it anyway, because like not gonna tell me what to do. And what I found was that people are open to this information. The biggest challenge for most of the people in the communities where I work is that they didn't even know that there were these other options, or it never even occurred to them to do things any differently. And when it's presented to them in like a loving way, in a kind way, in a way that makes people feel a sense of community and a sense of connectedness, there are no barriers. I mean, people are, COVID-19 has really shut down a lot of our work, our community-based work that we were doing, but it had gotten to the point where every single one of our events would bring out hundreds of people. I mean, those were the smaller events, would bring out hundreds of people. And like the bigger events, like Vegan Soul Fest, would bring out tens of thousands. And so, that barrier, that the thing that people have in their heads, especially food justice activists, who are very like there's almost like this condescending attitude that they have towards low-income people of color, where it's just like, oh, they're not going to eat that, they're not going to be interested in that, they don't care about that. And it's very limiting. It's a very limiting way of viewing people. And honestly, I think that it has some of its roots in racist ideas. Like Black people don't care about their health, or poor people aren't ever going to change. And so, the work that we've done, people have been very open to it. They've been excited about these new foods. They've been ready to, go home and try these recipes. And especially when we're able to show them, like, this is how you can do it within your budget. This is how you can do it within your accessibility. Then really all the barriers break down. Now, just going into a space, coming in as an outsider and being like, this is why everything that you're doing is wrong and you need to change, and then just, throwing up deuces and being like, okay, good luck with that. That's not going to go over very well at all. But again, that's why our work in Baltimore is very community based, because when people feel a sense of community, they're much more open to what you have to say.
Yeah, that's great. So we have so many really, really good questions. And I want to make sure we don't miss anybody. So let's see, Savannah asked just how, she says, hey, Brenda, how did you get involved in vegan food justice? What made you interested?
Well, I've been vegan for about 23 years now. And it was probably about, 10 years ago now. I came across this information about a study that had been done by Johns Hopkins here in Baltimore, where they compared two different communities in Baltimore. One was a very poor Black community, and the other one was a rich, very affluent white community. And the two neighborhoods are very close to each other. And so the they studied the health outcomes of these folks, and they found that there was a 20-year life expectancy difference between the people in the low income Black community and the people in the wealthy white community. And the main factor that they identified that made the difference was diet. And everybody apparently was surprised at this outcome because they thought that it would be, other things like socioeconomic factors and all these, but they found that the biggest the main factor was the difference in diet. And when I heard that, I had already been eating plant-based for like a decade, and I don't know, it moved me. I've always been the kind of person who, like, I don't just sit back. I've never been the kind of person that just sits back and feels like defeated or like there's nothing I can do. And so I just I decided that I was going to single-handedly fix this issue. And so I went out, I spent all the savings I had on cooking demo equipment. And I just started going door to door to churches, to community centers, anybody who would have me. And I would just do these free plant-based cooking demos. I would make delicious food. People would, eat the food. I would do like a lecture kind of thing along with that. I'm still connected to a lot of people to this day who who had come out to those cooking demo / talks, and this information that changed their lives. So it started with that, just me, just kamikaze, like, activism, just going out by myself. I didn't know other people who were doing this. I didn't know that there was a vegan movement. I didn't know anything. I just knew that I had to do something, and that I knew how to do something to help people. And so I did.
That's so awesome and inspiring, I think, to everybody. So there's a couple of questions. I don't want to skip over anybody, but just to kind of merge, there's a couple of questions that are coming up about food deserts and food insecurity, and what your thoughts are on food deserts and on policies that are being worked on to address food deserts and food insecurity. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. So that in particular is a topic that's pretty near to my heart because I grew up food insecure. I grew up in the projects of Baltimore City. We often did not have money for food. I experienced hunger throughout my childhood, like real hunger, like not, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten in 4 hours, I'm so hungry, but like I didn't eat today kind of hunger. And people who are not from these communities, people who have never been to these communities have no idea. Like when I hear vegans, animal rights activists say like anybody can go vegan, beans and rice are cheap, it just really gets under my skin. And I wish that people could just put that whole narrative to rest, because unless you've been there, like, and I've even in some of my talks showed photos of my neighborhoods, neighborhoods that I've lived in and around Baltimore City. And I just really think that you can't get it. You can't get what it's like to be targeted with the worst possible animal product food available. Like, and that is so insidious. It is planned out. It is targeted at people, just the most harmful, most horrible foods that people can possibly imagine are trucked in and dumped into low-income communities around in cities around the country. And the people who are there are oftentimes just helpless to do anything about it. They don't feel empowered. They don't feel like they have a voice to say like, this is not what we want in our communities, and so we want something else. and oftentimes like for me, it had been generations, like multiple generations of seeing the same terrible foods in our community. So by the time I came along, that was just food. Like that's what you eat. I had no idea that there were other foods because, when you live in these sort of like cloistered communities, you don't really know what's going on outside the community. And if you're lucky enough to have a job or two or three, and then you're working, you're just trying to survive, you go to work, come home, go back to your second job. I mean, like there isn't just this freedom of movement, there isn't this just freedom of choice to just be like, oh, I think I'll just stop by Whole Foods today and get a salad. Like that doesn't exist. And people who are not from here will never understand, will never, ever, ever understand the crushing weight of having like this crap pushed on you generation after generation after generation. And so, yeah, like food deserts, now food swamps, food, whatever you want to, food tundras, like whatever you want to call them, like areas where, like the entire community is just devoid of anything that any of us would ever even consider food. That is a real thing that real human beings are dealing with every single day, families, children, elderly people, and they may not necessarily see a way out of that situation or even fathom that there is a way out of that situation. And so for people who don't know about this, they really shouldn't talk about this. And it irks me when they do. In terms of policy, I mean, caring this sort of concern for the most marginalized people, like people living at the furthest margins of society, it comes and goes. It comes and goes in waves. Like bunch of folks will get together, do a focus group, and try to figure out what's wrong with people, what's wrong with margin, like low income Black and brown people, like what do we need to do to fix them. And so that happened. All these reports came out about people not having access to food, meaning they did not live in close proximity to any food, like real food, like fresh fruits and vegetables. And then sure, like there are folks who started to push for policies that, I don't know, put funding towards programs like, from the WIC office that like, maybe somebody would come in and do a cooking demo at a farmer's market or at a WIC office, or, like trying to get people to have access to more fresh foods through their SNAP benefits or stuff like that. But I think that there just needs to be a more comprehensive way of looking at what the root of the problem is and how to create solutions. And these, putting band-aids on gushing wounds type solutions are not doing it. I mean, people have been coming into the hood since I was born trying to solve the problems. And, the program comes in, it's nice, people are nice to us. They, are giving us nice stuff for a little while, and then it kind of peters out, they disappear, and the program is gone. So, and then until the next batch of well-meaning white people come in to try to solve our problems. So, it really has to, first of all, come from the ground up. Like we need to be listening to people in these communities, asking, what is it that you need? What is the problem? We're not going to come in and tell you what the problem is. We're going to come in and ask you what the problems are. And that kind of thing, and listening to activists like me on the ground and funding us, and like allowing us to create programs and that kind of thing, so that real solutions can start to be brought to the table.
Well, I think you just 100% answered this question. I'm still going to read it from Simone, our mutual friend. Hey, Simone. But I think what you just said is exactly the answer to this question. And it's such an important question that, like, I think it doesn't hurt to just pause on it a minute, especially for us as vegan activists, to like really hear what you just said. But so Simone's question was, Brenda, can you tell us about what distinguishes good vegan food justice initiatives from misguided / opportunistic charity work? I see some of the latter being characterized as food justice.
Well, I mean, in general, charity work is not food justice work. I mean, just charity work is not about creating solutions. It's about staunching the flow. um, it's about just sort of creating a bridge to I don't know, address like really, really serious issues. But I mean, charity doesn't ever solve problems. Food justice is about looking at what the root or the source of the problem is, how we got here, and then figuring out like how can we dig ourselves out of this situation. And I say ourselves out of this situation because people should be following the lead of the people who are in the situation. And so yeah, I mean, people come in and do performative stuff all the time. They've been doing that since I was little. When I was a little girl growing up in the project, I was involved in all manner of programs, you know, that were designed to help me and make me better. Some of them helped, others harmed. And so I think that you know, just taking the lead from, no matter what it is that you think you want to do and how you think you want to help people, there's already somebody doing it. There's already, I guarantee you, there's already somebody somewhere doing it. Do the work of finding those people. Don't be lazy. Don't just assume that you have the answers and you must be the one that has to do it. Go and find the people that are already working on it and support them and work with them, and, you know, like put your time and energy into helping them. And it may not look the way you want it to look. You know, I've collaborated with folks who have been doing some things that I did not feel completely comfortable um, with, and I just had to bring me to the table. I brought my understanding, I brought my passion, I brought my drive, and you know that sometimes that's the most that you can do.
Yeah, such important advice for all of us. So another related question, I'm just going to jump over back to the chat panel because it's related. Hey, Brenda, it's Laura Schleifer.
Hey, Laura.
Sorry if I get anybody's name wrong. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on connecting the work you're doing in Baltimore with other community sovereignty, mutual aid, solidarity-based initiatives such as Jackson Cooperative. Do you think it would be helpful / possible to connect that movement with the vegan food justice movement?
Laura, you know I have thoughts on everything. Stop playing. So it's very, very important to connect your efforts with the efforts of other folks. And if you can find people to connect with whose values line up with yours, I mean, that is just, it's chef's kiss. Like it's just like such a beautiful and momentous occasion. Um, I don't know what you said Jackson Cooperative. I'm not really sure what that is. Is that like, can somebody fill me in?
Let's see. So, Laura, can you type in the chat box what the
Cooperation
Jackson? Oh, Adam says Cooperation Jackson.
Okay, Adam, you want to tell me what that is? Adam is my friend. I think that's Adam, my friend. That might be a different Adam. And if so, sorry, Adam. But
oh, here, let's see. We got a
okay. Well, yeah, he posted a link, so that's definitely my friend. Okay, so
let's see. Do you want me to go to it?
yeah. I mean, it and I can just talk while you do that.
Oh, Jackson, Mississippi. Building a solidarity economy in Jackson, Mississippi, anchored by a network of cooperatives and worker-owned, democratically self-managed enterprises.
Yeah,
Oh,
so that is so that is so such an important and just valuable uh economic model, worker owned cooperatives, um communal like economics. I mean, I could do a whole talk just on that and the importance of bringing things back down to the community level. A lot of what I talk about in my activism, and can I just say that community level activism is so not appreciated and valued. And I've been coming up, against a lot of barriers because like funding barriers, even because of the type of activism that I do, because you know folks want to get the most bang for their buck. And so, just looking at the work that we do, the connections that we make, the community that we're creating, it's just not seen as like the essential work that it is. And what I've noticed is that there's lots of folks who are sort of doing their thing, spinning in their own solar system, and like those solar systems are not intersecting with each other, like they're not coming into each other's orbits. And so you wouldn't even know that these people over here are doing this and those people over there are doing that, and that is really, really unfortunate. And so, if there are resources that are bringing these cooperatives together, who are connecting people who are sort of in their own world doing their own thing, I am always, always open to making those kinds of connections and building with other folks together. So I think that that is absolutely essential to um to making this kind of community activism, like taking this kind of community activism to the next level. So
so I want to just again, I'm sorry I'm skipping around. I hope people don't think that I'm missing your questions, but just again, kind of like to keep, just because we're having like this conversation and there are related questions, and I thought I would wait to get to some of the other questions, once we fully explore this topic. So Savannah Reynolds asked, do you have any suggestions on how folks can get involved in the food justice movement?
yes, yes, I do. um Again, I'm gonna go back to like wherever you are, find out who the folks who are doing food justice work are, and plug into that. And again, if you're doing this work through a vegan lens, it is not gonna always be like terribly comfortable for you. But the thing is, we want to sort of like wall ourselves off and just be together and like be with each other because that's safe and it feels good, and it kind of shields us from the ickiness that's out there. But just think about the fact that like if you're not going into those spaces, then nobody is in those spaces, and nobody is bringing these things up, and nobody is bringing these perspectives, and nobody is saying these things. And so the status quo just continues. And honestly, the food justice uh, arena, they need to get it together. Like they folks need to be much more open to the idea of pushing plant-based foods, especially if you're talking about working within communities that are disproportionately affected by the foods that are causing their health problems. Like, how do you even live with yourself knowing that you're working with people with exorbitantly high like rates of every disease, heart disease and diabetes, and you're not pushing the best possible foods to them that you can, because you just think, oh, they won't eat that. Well, I'm here to tell you, they will eat that. They are eating that. When somebody like me is coming into the room and saying, look, this is great food, this is the reason why it's so much better, these are all the variety of reasons why this is going to improve your life, and doing it from a space of not underestimating them and not looking down on them and thinking like they don't have the capacity for, like reasoning, and so wow, I just got way off. Okay, so
Oh, and actually, you're also like, you just took us to the next question entirely, which is from Amy, who asked, can you talk about how you navigate partnerships with food justice organizations that are not vegan? For example, if you were to collaborate on an event or large project and the other organization's partners wanted to incorporate non-vegan foods.
Regardless of what other organizations are doing, we're bringing vegan food. Like we're not just bringing vegan food, but we're bringing delicious vegan food. And we're not just bringing delicious vegan food, but we're bringing a lot of delicious vegan food. And the fact that we actually have a vegan food service business is helpful with the greener kitchen. But like wherever I go, I'm bringing enough food for everybody. And, you can't control people who are going to bring animal products into a space. And if you think that you don't belong there because there are people who are bringing animal foods into a space, I think that you're looking at it incorrectly. Like, it's your influence in bringing this other perspective into the space that is going to create this momentum and this shift in that space. And we've had that happen so many times. I mean, when we are collaborating with another organization and we come with straight up like catering equipment, like you got to set up 2 6-foot tables for us because we are going to dominate that space with delicious vegan foods that people are excited about and want to eat. And then we have literature on the table, and then we have, contact information, and we have all this stuff. Like that's when the shift starts to be made. So don't focus on that. Don't focus on, well, they're doing this and they're doing that, and I don't approve. No, come in and like make that space what you believe that it should be through giving, through being of service. Be of service. Give, like be the change. And oh, get right. And so like don't get hung up on that. If you get hung up on that, you won't ever move forward. And I can tell you that right now. I used to be there, like I don't want to go there because I know they're gonna have meat, and now I'm like, oh, okay, oh, I'm going, and you better watch out when I get there. Like that's how I see it now.
Well, we all wish that we could just bring you to every event.
Yeah, like when the world opens back up, fly me out.
Okay, we'll work on that. Yeah, hopefully next year we'll all be protected from this virus, and we will fly you back down here for another in-person event.
That would be awesome.
So again, I think you've been answering this in many ways, but Jim asked, what are some effective methods you have found to help people be more receptive to trying or adopting a vegan lifestyle?
Education. It for me in the communities where I work, teaching people. Oh, I know we're gonna open back up, Samantha. Okay, it's happening. I promise you. Yeah, like because I don't know if other folks grew up with the elder people saying, when you know better, you can do better. But I grew up hearing that from elders my whole life. If you don't know what you don't know, then how are you gonna know? And so just teaching people, bringing that information to folks with an open heart, with the desire to better their lives in whatever way that you possibly can, is the main way to like have them be open, and to always come from the perspective that you're working towards the greatest good. I think that one thing that happens with activists from all different movements is that it becomes really personal. for us. And and so people perceiving people as not being open to what you have to say just becomes like a personal insult, and then that just kind of makes you angry or upset, and then that energy sort of comes out, and that is what, like, how you're representing what it is that you're bringing. And that's just not effective activism. Like, if you are just very, very angry about the state of the world, and you are coming to people with, like, in that state, like in that energy, I just don't maybe other angry people will be open to what you have to say, but like the average person is going to shut down. They're going to shut down. And so, I'm not asking people to be saints, but we're doing this for a greater good. And so it's really, really important how we're approaching this work.
Can I just say, there's a quote, I always get my quotes like all mixed up, I shouldn't try, but there's a quote by Gandhi. He said, make sure your message is delivered with love, or the message and the messenger will be rejected. So,
well, I'm sure we've all experienced that. I mean, who hasn't been on social media or, in a group of people, and just, I don't know, like it was just a bad day, or somebody said something that just ticked you off, and, your message did not come out in the best way, and it was not received in the best way. It happens. It happens, but we have to stay focused on the.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to just come back up. Dr. Raoul Richardson from Mobile posted a question way up at the top of the chat, and I just wanted to come back and get to it before we maybe take a couple questions that aren't so much about about justice. So Dr. Richardson is like an amazing justice activist and educator in the community, and we were always just like felt so blessed when he would come to one of the ARC dinners. And he asked, let's see, it just disappeared. Here you go. So he says, no, let's see, hold on, sorry, I gotta scroll back up here. But I wanted to read it. But basically, as a justice activist, he says, okay, as an environmental injustice advocate, I am grateful for your passionate, purposeful work. The overfishing is particularly concerning. The future will be ripe with battles over food and water. What can a pescatarian on this journey do to respond and address the fight?
Stop eating fish. That's probably not the answer that you were looking for, but I mean, yeah, and that's kind of the reason why I spend so much time on the fishing industry, because I don't know that I've ever spent that much time on the fishing industry, and the eventual collapse of our oceans if we don't like make a sharp detour very soon. There's just a lot of differing views and conflicting views on this topic, and it's really difficult. It will be really difficult for me to talk about this with a pescatarian, because it's like, I mean, where I stand is where I stand, and I just don't think that we need to be consuming marine animals. And I don't think that we should be consuming marine animals. And so it's difficult for me to talk about this issue without being very clear about that. I mean, there's a whole other world under the ocean that we, are not terribly, I mean, we don't know a whole lot about it. We don't really have the ability to, whereas we have the ability to destroy it, I don't know that we have the ability to like repair all the damage that's done. And I mean, but I mean, it's very hopeful that just in us like stopping what we're doing, if we halt what we're doing, that these ocean ecosystems will actually, and have been shown to a certain degree, to actually rebalance themselves. I mean, it's a tactic that, you know, the fishing industry actually uses. Once they've depleted all the marine animals in an area, they'll just leave it alone for a while, and then it repopulates, and, you know, and then they go back and do the same thing again. So I mean, there is evidence that there are ways to I don't know, to lessen our impact and maybe even reverse it. And it is so concerned. I mean, there's, I mean, oxygen is created in the ocean. Um, and we mostly talk about the, you know, the oxygen jet that is generated by trees, but we don't even talk about the plant life in the ocean that creates actually the majority of the oxygen that we breathe. And here we are, you know, destroying both because, hey, why not, right? We're humans, that's what we do. But you know, it is very concerning on so many different levels, and I personally am very, very concerned about those marine creatures themselves. Like, I see them as individuals. So, you know, even having conversations about, like, about them as if they are like part of the environment, part of the ocean environment, is uncomfortable for me because I don't see it that way. But I would say that, honestly, Doc, I don't know what you were expecting me to say, but I gotta say, like, I think that pescatarians should stop eating marine animals. I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like one of those hard things. Like people ask questions, like, you know, kind of hoping, maybe wanting one answer, but the truth is, as you say, and I know a couple, like, I think, you know, talking about like the oceans coming back, like I think there's a tipping point, right? I think scientists tell us that if we don't stop fishing the way we're fishing, and this is more of like an environmental, I think, perspective than an individual seeing fishes as individuals, but just that if we don't stop doing what we're doing, there won't be, like, we will eliminate all fished species within 50 years. And then on an individual level, we just know that they have the ability to suffer like we do, like other animals do. And that the suffering in the fishing industry is one of the industries that causes the most suffering. Like, we think of all animal agriculture, and the fish are actually, you know, I think chickens and fish are the two species that probably experience the most extreme suffering. So I think we probably only have time for one last question, but just here for, and then of course you can take as much time as you want, but just one last question here from Sina. Asked, he said, there was a lot on these issues stemming from large scale animal farming operations. In response to these things, there seems to be a resurgence to small scale animal farming practices and hunting that a lot of people claim enable animal consumption while somehow avoiding those things. What kind of response would there be for that? Is there even enough data on those things to say they cause similar problems aside from the killing of animals?
Oh, Cena. I don't know. Was that question directed at me? I I don't know. I am not the expert on research in all things animal related. Um, and I agree that focusing on factory farms, large scale industrial animal agriculture, created fertile ground for industry, for the, you know, the small farm, the organic farm, the family farm, folks to sort of swoop in and say, hey, we're the solution. But many of these issues still exist. I mean, clearly, the issue of the exploitation of animals of other sentient beings still exists no matter what kind of farm you're talking about. But even beyond that, you know, the threat of viral pandemics exists no matter how small your farm is, no matter how organic or grass fed or whatever. If you're keeping animals in captivity, and humans are in close proximity to those animals in captivity, it's going to be a problem, and it's going to continue to be a problem, and it's going to become a worse problem. I don't know. That's one of the things that I come up against this in the food justice arena, because and even in the environmental movement, like, these smaller farms are definitely seen as an alternative. It's all about the CAFOs. Like, let's shut down the CAFOs. The CAFOs are the problem. And then these smaller farming operations, these family farming operations, are looked at as the solution. I don't know. And then hunting, I don't know. Like, I know where this hunting question is coming from. I've been in the groups. I've seen this question come up over and over and over again. And honestly, I'm not terribly interested in focusing on it. So you're not going to trick me into talking about that. Because the thing is, like, even folks that are doing hunting, I would say the vast majority of folks who are quote unquote hunting for their food go to the grocery store. They go to restaurants. I mean, maybe remote tribes of people who are like not in any kind of proximity to civilization are like hunting and not having this huge impact on the planet. But for me, I don't even really, like, I'm in the hood. Like, I don't really need to be focused on that, like, I'm not going to, because, like, there needs to be somebody that's in that remote tribe that just has an epiphany, and they wake up one day and they're like, you know what, this hunting is BS. We need to do something different. And then they need to work that out. I'm going to work out what's going on in the hood, in my environment, in the community where I work, because that's what I know, and that's where I'm passionate, and that's where I am. So that's where I stand on that.
So Sina, I was asking about people in urban areas who advocate hunting.
Like,
I guess
who?
I don't know.
Who are these people? Who are these people?
I think Sina might be a vegan, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't think Sina is asking because
for sure.
she wants to consume small.
No. I know who this is. I know who this is. Yeah. I just need. Who are these people in
Sina,
urban?
I think that's a question for you. Who are these urban people who want to hunt? I will say where I am, where ARC is, this is a huge hunting area. So that's an issue that we, it's very relevant to us here. But it's like, let's see. So Sina says, people I know who talk about food justice and bring up hunting as an alternative to meat consumption. I think he probably means alternative to industrial meat production.
Well, I mean, hunting is an alternative to that, but it's not the alternative I would choose. It's not the alternative I am going to promote ever. And I don't glorify hunting. I mostly, I just keep my mouth shut in these kinds of situations, because it's just not my wheelhouse, and it's not something.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I think like there've been some comments in the chat about small scale animal product production. What do I want to say? Animal agriculture, small scale, family farms, and hunting. But I mean, basically, right? Yeah, all the animals are still killed. A lot of the same practices are used on a small scale, as much in the backyard. I mean, I know from having chickens, a little chicken sanctuary, right? I mean, I know a lot of people who have backyard chickens, and do a lot of the same terrible practices that are done in industrial agriculture. And I think that's true across the board with animal products. And again, for the most part, animals are killed as babies when we use them for animal products. Hunting, you break up families. And in terms of health, you still have all the same health issues. But it is a whole other conversation. So I'm afraid we're even already over time, and I want to give you time to say anything final words you want to say, but I also want to ask you just to let people know how to reach out to you. Like, there have been some comments in the chat, and I know everybody who's in this call wants to continue to follow you and see what you're doing and learn from you and support you. And so if people want to, if people are in your area and they want to help you, or if they're around the world and they want to support you or follow you, can you tell us what the best way is to do that?
Tracy, I'm all over the place.
It
is like, where do you go? I even at one point attempted to sort of consolidate all the stuff into one place, which is brendasanders.info. But honestly, trying to just keep up with that, and so much stuff is happening even since the pandemic started, and so many things have shifted, and with Afro Vegan Society, because we're not able to do the huge in-person events that we were doing all throughout the year at Thrive Baltimore. We've shifted all of our activism onto the Afro Vegan Society platform, and so now that is an amazing space. I mean, that is just I just love what the Afro Vegan Society team has been able to do.
You should all go like the page right now.
Yeah, Afro Vegan Society and afrovegansociety.org, and our YouTube page is popping. I mean, we have so much content available to people. Like us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube page, and just one of the things that people can do, even if you may not have the means to support us financially, share our stuff. We are constantly putting out content from all of our platforms daily, and the more people who share it, the more people will see it, and I think it's really, really important, especially right now, for people to be exposed to this information.
Well, I just want to thank everybody who attended and all the great conversation. Of course, we did have a few trolls we had to get rid of early on.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, sorry, it took me a minute to catch on what was happening. I really apologize for that, but we got rid of them pretty quick. And next time I will actually require registration, I think, so we can find those trolls. But anyway, sorry about that. Otherwise, I think it was just a great conversation. I appreciate everybody who was here. We'll definitely invite Brenda to come back. But again, there's now that, Brenda's, you can find podcasts and, follow her everywhere, but we'll all be following you. Thank you for the amazing work that you do, for being such a fabulous human and inspiration and really impactful activist, and then for sharing your passion with all of us. And we will again put the recording. We'll get the recording up both on the Afro Vegan Society and the ARC pages as soon as the link is ready. And if you're not already following ARC, please do. And then also, I'm just one tiny little plug for a documentary that I recently finished that Brenda is featured in. So that's another place that you can see more of Brenda, is in my documentary, Until All Are Free. Erica Meyer is also featured in it, and Erica's been in this conversation with us, and hopefully we're going to get Erica to do a talk for us sometime soon too. So thank you all for caring about justice and being compassionate humans. And Brenda, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. You're one of my favorite humans. So.
Oh my gosh. You're That means everything because you are so one of my favorite humans. So thank you. All right. Hopefully see everybody soon. Be safe and
Take care.
do good work. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.